Hi, everybody. I hope you guys can hear me, but my name is McKinley. I'm the marketing manager for Utah Manufacturers Association, and today we are going to be doing part three on the 6 steps of better hiring with Stephen Smith from Applicant Pro. He's going to be going over job ad content and impressing the applicant. Steve, if you're ready to go, you can take it from here.
Oh, I'm so ready. Yeah, just by way of introduction, for those of you who have not had a chance to attend some of the webinars before, we did have 2 webinars before this. I highly recommend going back and watching those. We talked heavily last week about the importance of job ad content and what kind of information to put in the ad. Today, we're actually going to cover steps 4 and 5. And so I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of these presentations. As a brief reminder, Applicant Pro is an applicant tracking software platform. We have about 10,000 companies across the country, actually across the world, many of which are in the manufacturing world. These presentations have been designed specifically for manufacturing. And so some of the things we're going to talk about this time and then our final webinar are going to be very specific to manufacturing. So today you're going to get a few tidbits of information that we find with a lot of manufacturing roles or organizations and some of the things they struggle with. So I am a SHRM CP and PHR certified. Just to know a little bit about me, been in the recruiting world now for almost 18 years, actually. Have consulted with thousands of organizations. I'm currently the Utah State SHRM director. And I've recently written a book called The Hiring Tree. In fact, a lot of the material and things that we talk about in these presentations comes from my book. And so for those that want to follow, it's going to be published towards the end of this year. We'll be making announcements and things like that. So you'll be able to read that if you want. So let's pick up where we left off. So for the past 2 weeks, or 4 weeks, because it's every 2 weeks, we've talked about defining the who. You had a homework assignment, determining a little bit more about your position. We talked about creating an awesome job product and upgrading the message, which has a lot to do with content and making sure that the information that we're putting in a job ad is something that the applicant is not only trying to find, but when applicants do their job search, they're looking for answers. And oftentimes our job ads don't always give them the answers that they seek. So once we have content kind of created and it's good enough to be able to attract the applicant and help them feel excited about working for the organization, we now have to look at the application process, as well as this concept called an effective distribution engine. And so those are the 2 concepts that we're going to talk about on this particular webinar today. So let's talk about this frictionless application process, because today, so it's kind of interesting. If you look at historically, one of the things that COVID really caused was a lot of baby boomers to retire early. So baby boomer generation really wasn't supposed to just, really see a huge influx of retirement until about 2028, 2030, thereabouts. However, with COVID, a lot of those individuals have decided to kind of step away altogether. And for those that did come back, they simply almost switched industries altogether. So what's happening is in the marketplace right now, especially for manufacturing, some of the applicants that you're looking for are probably going to be a tad bit younger than what you have experienced in the past. And the challenge is we're trying to use old 20th century application processes to attract this newer generation. Well, the reality is this newer generation, they're used to dating apps where we swipe right? In the dating world, if you swipe left, it's not a match. And if you swipe right, then there's a match. And the whole purpose of that is to let them know that, hey, I at least am interested in you. And then if you're interested in me, let's connect for something, right? So what's happening in the job market world is the application process has become more like a dating app, where if it is not short and simplistic, it makes it very difficult for applicants to even want to finish the application process. And so you get this huge number of drop-offs just based on the fact that they get stuck and they just don't know how to proceed, or they don't want to proceed because they look at the application like, oh my gosh, this is going to take like 20 minutes to fill out. So this is actually a really important part of the process, because last time we talked about how important it is to attract the applicant to the role. But there's nothing less attractive than getting them to the point of, okay, now you need to swipe right. And instead of swiping right, I'm asking for fingerprints and all the other stuff that can kind of come into that in the dating world, at least. So let's talk about this. One of the things that was kind of introduced when the internet came out was this attitude of, hey, since I can collect stuff online and it's simpler, I don't have to have applicants come into the office and fill out this huge long paper application. Let's go ahead and make them do it online. But the problem is it created this attitude of if they really want it, they're willing to go through the process. So for those of you on the call today, if you think about this, when was the last time you heard this comment? I hear this comment all the time with managers, with CEOs, with owners of manufacturing organizations across the country. And this is probably one of the most common themes that I hear. If they really want it, they're willing to go through the process. But again, the mindset has shifted. If they really want it, they're actually not willing to go through the process. If they really want it, they want it to be simplistic, because think about your applicants in the manufacturing world. If you recall, I believe in the first webinar that we did, over 80% of your applicants, and in some areas that I've seen, almost 90% of applicants that are applying in the manufacturing world are applying using this. Because most of them don't have internet access. In fact, the only internet access they have is through their phone. They're not even using a computer. So if you can imagine, I'm on this device trying to fill out an application, and if the application is going to take 15 minutes on a computer, how much longer do you think it might take on a phone? And so it's really important to understand the nature of the candidates that we're trying to hire, and understand that we can't have this attitude anymore of, hey, if you really want this, they're going to be willing to go through it. Because it's just not the case anymore. Even for your higher level type positions, manager positions, executive positions, they're just not willing to go through the process. I mean, think about it. If you yourself were applying for a job right now, how excited would you be to fill out a 15-minute application online, starting from scratch, if you will, in hopes that you might get an interview? So it's just something to really think about. A lot of manufacturing companies want everything up front, so give me the full application. Some of them, unfortunately, are still collecting social securities and dates of birth on the application. Did you know that's a huge no-no? Department of Labor says, no, you can't do that. They highly frown upon that, especially with a lot of privacy laws and security laws coming into place, because realistically, you don't really need to collect a social security number or a date of birth until the applicant is at a certain stage of the application process. For example, let's say that there's an offer on the table and we now have to legitimately run a background check or do a drug test. Well, that's an appropriate time to collect that information. For those of you that have drivers on your team, the DOT requires this information, but again, only unless that applicant is to a point in the process where there's either an offer on the table or we're going to extend an offer contingent upon a successful background check. So it's important to look at your process and determine, are we still asking for the social and date of birth up front for every single applicant? There's two reasons you want to do that. One, Department of Labor says you shouldn't do that anyway. But two, think about the liability there as an organization. If you're collecting that private information for every single applicant, and there is some type of breach or something happens at your organization, guess who's now liable? So it's much better to be liable for a small number of applicants based on a need for that information as opposed to the applicants as a whole. So that is a common mistake I see with a lot of manufacturing organizations where they're collecting this type of information on the application. So if you're doing that, we just strongly recommend that you stop. It's the liability is not worth it. Privacy laws now basically make it much harder, and the Department of Labor says no anyway. So the other thing we've talked about previously is posting the whole job description. Next time, we're going to have a whole webinar on this job description and optimization practices. I'm really excited about that. It's one of the favorite parts of these webinars that we do. So stay tuned on that one. And then obviously a lot of manufacturing don't even list the pay structure, which is actually hurting you now. So let's talk about this process. We talked a little bit about mobile friendliness. If an applicant, in order for them to apply with you, is not able to fill out an application using a mobile device in an easy, user-friendly way, you are already losing a good chunk, probably anywhere between 70 and 80% of your applicants right off the bat, because they don't want to spend the time on their mobile device. And think about this. Most applicants will apply on like a Monday or a Tuesday, and it's usually while they're at their current job because they're frustrated at their current job and they're seeking, they're looking. And so they're usually on a break, or they only have a limited amount of time to apply anyway. So why not make it easy? So if you look at your application process right now and it is not mobile friendly, that is killing your applicant flow, because it has to be that way. Another thing is your career website. Think about the career website. You know, somebody goes to your website, they can, where in the world is the careers page? That is the number one thing I hear with a lot of applicants. They said, well, I went to the website and I could not find the career site. And so a lot of manufacturing companies are kind of the old school, where you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the website, and then you'll find a little tiny button down there that says careers or jobs or employment. And that's where you have to find it. Sometimes it's even worse, and you actually have to scroll down and then click a menu that then pops up a list, and then I have to find careers. Make it simple and easy to find open positions for your organization. The harder you make it, and the more clicks an applicant has to go through in order to find it, for those that are coming to your website. Now, keep in mind, probably only about 20% on average, 20% of your applicants are going to be coming from your website directly, because they've Googled your company, or they've Googled jobs in the area. And so they get taken to your company website and they want to apply that way. So that accounts for about 20% of your applicants. So if you don't make it simple for them to find your careers page, you're going to lose those 20%. That can be really rough, especially if those applicants are well qualified. Sometimes with employee referrals too, they get sent over there. We're going to talk about employee referrals today. They get sent to the website, and again, they just have difficulty finding it. So it's really important to make sure that your career site is user-friendly and that it's easy to find the jobs. The best place to do it is have a little menu item up at the top that says jobs or careers. Those are the two most popular search terms. Employment, not so much. So if you're going to do it, I would recommend the word jobs or the word careers, because that is the best way to do it. Now, you can still have it in your footer too, because that will help for search engine optimization purposes, but make it simple to find. There are so many manufacturing organizations that I look at when we do a review of their website. That's a problem. The next thing is this concept of a redirect or an easy apply. So this concept is extremely important, because most of the major job boards like ZipRecruiter, Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn even, most of these major boards today function or have the option to function using a concept called easy apply. However, most manufacturing companies that I speak with are still on the old redirect model. So what's the difference? A redirect is, let's say that I go to Indeed and I do a search, I find your job, I click on it, it redirects me to your website, or it redirects me to your applicant tracking system, or it redirects me to whatever page you want them to land on. And then from there, they're prompted to fill out the application. Easy apply, they actually never leave Indeed or the website. So they find the job on Indeed, they click to apply, it prompts them to inhale their profile information. And then all of a sudden, within 2 seconds, it inhales all the information from their profile, their resume, basic contact info, email, phone number, etc. And now the applicant doesn't have to spend a lot of time filling out extra stuff or filling out stuff they've already filled out before, because it just inhales it. And so in a redirect, okay, when you have a redirect option, you will lose about 70 to 76% of your applicants. That's the average right now. So what happens is when an applicant clicks on the button and they get redirected over the website, and from there they're supposed to apply, they get frustrated and they'll actually abandon the process. Why do they abandon the process? Because they don't want to start from scratch. They've applied for other organizations in the area. They've been applying for jobs probably for several days or maybe weeks. And as they've done that application process for those companies where it's like easy apply, use my profile, answer a few questions, and you're done, it's so much easier. And once an applicant gets familiar with that concept of easy apply, they're no longer interested in the redirect, because then if they get redirected and they have to fill out things, that's hard. Now, there was a question, which was a great question, Yvonne. Yes, Indeed is user-friendly and Indeed is mobile-friendly. And in fact, Indeed is one of the first organizations that developed the concept of mobile technology. So one of the unique things about Applicant Pro here, Applicant Pro actually started their partnership with Indeed about 14 years ago. And with that partnership, what we tried to do is we tried to watch the market. And it was 8 years ago where we introduced the first mobile technology. Now, 8 years ago, only about 2% of people were applying with mobile devices. And of those that were applying, it was really clunky. It was really hard, right? Now, almost everybody does it. It accounts for a majority of applications out there. So yes, Indeed is mobile friendly. And when they first introduced that technology 8 years ago, people laughed at them. People laughed at us when Applicant Pro said, we're on board with that. And let's develop this model to make it easy to apply and also make it mobile friendly. People laughed at us. And in fact, some of our own clients laughed at us and they said, that'll never work. That's never going to go anywhere. And so they're just like, nah, we're going to opt out for now. And boy, I'll tell you what, within 2 to 3 years, they were opting in like crazy because they realized that this was the future. Now, think about the concept of an easy apply. So most of you are probably familiar with the concept called resume parsing. Resume parsing is when I get your website, I can load my resume and it parses all the information in the wrong places sometimes, and I have to go fix it and whatever. But the concept of parsing was to make it very simple. The problem with resume parsing is resume parsing only works about 80% of the time, and in some cases even less, depending on the technology on the company's own website, right? So resume parsing is helpful, but the reason Easy Apply has replaced a lot of resume parsing is because Easy Apply allows for profile parsing and not just resume parsing. Profile parsing is always 100% accurate. Why? Because the ATS, like Applicant Pro, we build to Indeed's platform so that when the applicant chooses to use their profile to apply, it inhales all the information because we've already built the platform to match it correctly 100% of the time. So another reason why applicants prefer Easy Apply is because it's 100% accurate. It parses their profile 100% of the time in accuracy, as opposed to uploading a resume and then having some of the stuff get skewed or put in the wrong place, and then I have to go and delete and things of that nature. So that's another reason why Easy Apply is so popular. So it's just important, again, to look at your process, especially with the major boards, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor, LinkedIn. If your current process or your current applicant tracking system does not have this Easy Apply feature for these major boards, or if you don't have it turned on, you need to turn it on because you're losing 70 to 76% of your applicants right off the bat. And like I said, that's a general number. In the manufacturing world, because there are a lot more applicants on mobile devices, I would venture to guess that number is probably slightly higher. And so we don't want to lose applicants at this point of the stage, especially since we've attracted them enough to the position that they're excited to apply. And all of a sudden they get the application and we lose them. It's not where we want to lose them. Another place where we're losing a lot of applicants is requiring an account. Now, requiring an account is important because electronic signature laws in the United States require that we have to give the applicant access to what they've electronically signed. When they are filling out an application, they are electronically signing and agreeing to the application, and therefore they have to have a copy of that. And so that's why the concept of requiring an account setup is there. One of the unique things about Applicant Pro is when somebody comes from like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, et cetera, and they use that Easy Apply function, they don't realize it, but they are getting an account created automatically. But the applicant doesn't have to sit there and create the password and go through that process because it just gets created automatically for them. So in your process, whenever you can kind of bypass the requirement of setting up an account and make it more automated in that sense, again, that will increase applicant flow because they're not having to sit there and create a password and follow the rules of the password and all those types of things. It's just, it becomes a choke point. And so if your process can make it a little bit simpler without having to create an account, it's much better that way. And the cool part about it, the easy applies and quick applies from some of the major boards is it's easy to create that account automatically because we're parsing in the profile and it's everything we need for the account setup anyway. So the last thing is the length of the application. So if your application is longer than 5 minutes, for every 1 minute you are over, you're losing 50% of your applicants. Okay, I'm going to say that again. For every minute that you're over, and in fact, it's actually closer now to 4 minutes. So for every minute that you're over about 4 minutes on your application process, you lose 50% of your applicants. The longer it is, the less likely they are to stick around and actually complete it. And so you have a lot of abandonment. So you'll have people that'll start the process, but they just abandon the process. So again, the reason this part of the process is so important is because much like dating apps, it needs to be simplistic. Swipe right, right? I match, I match, I match, I match. Applicants don't want to be redirected and sent to all these different places to apply. They just want to go on Indeed, find the jobs they're interested in, click a quick apply, maybe answer a few questions and be done. That's what they want. Our average client right now averages about 3 minutes an application, a little under that. And so again, the shorter the application process up front to collect that information, the better. Now, one thing that I did not include here is a concept called a two-stage application, which changed, it was a game changer. When we introduced the concept of a two-stage application several years ago, again, we had a lot of people kind of against it, but what we found is if you allow an applicant to provide basic information up front to at least apply, kind of like that concept of swiping right, and then later on in the process, we invite them to fill out more information, which is part of the second stage, you increase your applicant flow up front. And in fact, in many cases, we saw an increase by almost 200%. And it has fluctuated throughout the years between 100 and 200% increase in applicant flow for companies that are coming from a non-two-stage application to a two-stage. And it just makes it a lot simpler for the applicant. So again, are we swiping left or are we swiping right? Okay, we want to make sure that we're getting applicants to swipe and that's all there is to it. It can't be this tedious process because you're going to lose a lot of those applicants right off the bat. Okay, so the last part of this session for today, we're going to talk about employee referrals. Now, one of the things that you have to really understand, so in my concept of the hiring tree for my book, the reason I developed the hiring tree is because oftentimes, especially in manufacturing, we rely on one source and that's it. And the challenge with relying on one source is when that source goes a little bit dry, you suddenly are scrambling, trying to throw more money at the process, and it doesn't always answer or give you the solution that you want, throwing more money at it. And so you have to have a balanced sourcing process at all times. There are basically 3 levels of sourcing. You have your inbound sourcing, which is people actually doing search. In essence, these are people that are raising their hands and saying, yes, I'm open to employment, going to job fairs, things of that nature, people that are just researching your industry or your website. You have your outbound, which is an email or social media. And display and things like that. So if you're a manufacturing company, most manufacturing companies don't do the display idea, but they may have some social aspects as well as email. And so those are great ways to get in touch with people. In fact, in the recruiting world, it's called a talent network. The problem is a talent network, you should never actually post your jobs. And in fact, I'm going to say this, and you might be shocked by this, but you should never post your job on a social media platform, ever. Let me tell you why. Because people are not on social media typically to follow your jobs. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes that I see with a lot of manufacturing organizations is they'll have their recruiters or their talent team go and join like a talent group on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. Well, the problem is that is not your target audience. When you're a recruiter and then you join a group of all these other recruiters, what are you doing? You're literally sharing your jobs with other recruiters. You're not sharing your jobs to a target audience of individuals that can actually come work for you. So it's almost counterintuitive. And so it's not good to just simply share your jobs in a group like that. However, in social media, think about what social media was designed for. Social media is most powerful in sharing, right? Who is the one that should share? Not the company, the employees of the company. That's such an important aspect to understand. This is why you should never post your jobs in a social media platform or even send it out in like an email and things like that. It should be shared by somebody else because when it comes from somebody else, it's much more powerful and it's much more impactful. And that's how social media was designed. The challenge with a lot of companies is they're treating social media and email marketing and these talent groups and such like they would any other job board. Let's just throw our job board out there, or job. Let's just throw the job out there and maybe people apply for it and you're getting no applicants, are you? So it's important to understand that the real power of outbound marketing, especially with social media, is when others are sharing your jobs, not the company directly. So just kind of keep that in mind and think about that. Let that sink in a little bit. The last thing, obviously, are referrals. So your own employees, which has a huge impact on social. Your customers, other influencers of your organization, just in speaking or blog posts and things like that. I'm sure McKinley, as a marketing person for UMA, she is an influencer for the organization. People listen to her, right? So that's a great example of referrals, if you will, that can stem from that. So really think about your own sourcing process right now. And are you relying heavily on one or the other? And more importantly, are you using them correctly? And so it's so important. So here's the cool part about job boards. It's not just about the job boards. Did you know that there's a 50-to-1 odd of hiring somebody from a job board compared to a 5-to-1 odd from an employee referral, a 12-to-1 odd from a fan or a follower, and then 7-to-1 odd from direct interest. And these are just people that are Googling and just wanting to go to your company directly. I would imagine, though, most of you are smaller employers or smaller manufacturing firms. There's probably not a lot of people that know the name of your company. And so when that happens, the direct interest kind of counterbalances a little bit to the employer referral part. And the employer referral becomes like the 8 to 9 to 1, and your direct interest can drop to about 3 to 4. So that's important to understand, because it is not just about the job boards. And it's usually a lot easier when you can filter less applicants to get to some really good hires, as opposed to having to filter a whole bunch to get to that desired fruit, if you will. So just kind of keep that in mind. So you don't need a social media presence in order to tap into your social network. Your employees are a great source of sharing positions with their network of friends. Facebook, for example, some of your older employees that use Facebook, and I say older, I'm in that group, right? But Facebook has a lot of groups that are tied to the neighborhood, groups that are tied to specific interests, groups that are tied. Those are the types of groups that your employees are a part of. And the only way you're going to tap into those groups and that network is to have a process in place that makes it very simple for an employee to share positions with their network of friends. And it all starts with desire. Do your employees love your organization enough that they're excited to tell their network and friends about what it's like to work for you? And hey, you should come work with me too, right? That is so important to understand, because again, you don't necessarily need social media presence to do this. Your employees can become this great network of people to share your positions out there. And I'll tell you right now, some of my best manufacturing clients, even the smaller ones that are like 20 employees, some of their best hires come from employee referrals. And in this market right now, because there's so many passive applicants, they're not actively job seeking right now. They would be interested if somebody said something. It accounts for 40 to 45% of their hires right now. Employee referrals does. And the cool part about employee referrals is they don't have to know the employee directly. For example, when an employee shares in a Facebook group in the neighborhood, they might have a neighbor that they really don't know that well express interest. That's awesome. That's exactly how powerful a social media network can be. And so it's just important to kind of understand that concept, okay? But employee referrals should be your number one right now. When this is the third recession that I've been in as basically working here at Applicant Pro and in the recruiting world. And I'll tell you what, every time there is a recession, the best types of hires come from employee referrals. And so if employee referrals doesn't account for 40 to 45% of your hires right now, then you're not doing it effectively enough, because that is the average. That is the average in the manufacturing world, where the hires come from employee referrals during recessions. So just kind of keep that in mind. So how do we tap into that? Well, we have to understand that sourcing is a team sport. It's not just a one-off, here and there. Everybody has to be involved in the process, and everybody has to be excited about the process. The challenge is sometimes our approach is not that great. So here's what we call an employee referral flywheel. The flywheel is basically a process. And, flywheel comes from the concept of Jim Collins' Good to Great, where you build up this momentum and then it just goes constant. And so here's the 6 steps for your employee referral program. There has to be a stress of importance. If your employees don't understand how important it is to you as an organization, then they won't want to follow. And when you stress that importance, it can't be you have to do this, you're an employee, you have to, back in the day, recruiters used to make the employees sit down and write down all the names of people they knew so they could go call people. It's just not the approach. It needs to be more of a natural approach. A good focus, contests are great, but let me tell you about contests. If you're going to include a contest in your process, it is much better to give out a lot of smaller prizes than it is to give out one big prize. So if I have $500 part of this contest, I shouldn't just give out one big $500 certificate to somebody in the company. Why? Because the odds are lower of winning. When the odds are lower, people don't want to participate. But let's say that I take that same $500 and I break it into $50 gift cards, and now I'm giving out 10. Well, the odds are much greater. There's a much greater chance that I can actually win that contest. And so you can increase participation if you're going to have contests. So if you're going to do contests, focus on smaller amounts and a lot more of them, as opposed to one big amount that is kind of like a pipe dream. Consistent drumbeat. What we have found is that on a weekly basis, reminding employees of how important the employee referral program is to the organization is best. Every 2 weeks, sometimes you start losing interest, and every month you've already lost their interest, right? But again, that drumbeat needs to be consistent, but also not overbearing. The goal here is not to overbear people and get them, oh, here we go, talking about employee referrals again. That's not the goal here. The goal here is to just be consistent about how important it feels to us. And that drumbeat kind of helps with that. Sharing links is also a great way to do this. If you're going to have contests, you want a scoreboard. Let me talk about the sharing links real quick. The sharing links are awesome because what happens is they get an email every week. And as you can see in that email, they can click on these little buttons and they can easily share it on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. They can email it to a friend. They can text it to a friend. So whatever your process is right now, it needs to be simple and shareable. One of the biggest challenges with employee referral programs is there's nothing simple about it. Somebody will refer somebody, and then the candidate will forget to put the name of the employee down, or I just heard about it from somebody in the neighborhood. And now that employee doesn't get credit for sharing, which is kind of sad, right? Employees want credit for sharing. And so whenever you can make it a lot easier for them, and obviously if you offer reward amounts, make that very visible to them, then you can not only increase the amount of people that are sharing the positions, but you increase the excitedness about it. There should be this level of excitement. If you have a scoreboard, here's an example of a scoreboard that we usually track. So you can kind of see who's winning the contest if you're giving out, 10, 500 or $50 gift cards. This is the last thing though on this. I can't emphasize this enough, and we're going to end here today. It is so important to express gratitude. Now, one of the biggest challenges that I see in the manufacturing world, and really it's the recruiter's fault and staffing agencies, because we're the ones that developed a lot of employee referral programs. But how many of you in your field or in your program currently, for those that have a program, how many of you reward your employees after like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months later, a year later? I can tell you right now that that is not an appropriate expression of gratitude. And here's why. When I'm giving them a reward much later down the road, I'm assuming that the employee is like a recruiter and knows how to find me a quality applicant. But we're not asking all of our employees to be a recruiter, are we? We're not asking them to go out there and find the best people and bring them to us. All we're asking them to do is to share the position with their network of friends. I just want you to share the good news. In sharing the good news, I'm going to reward you accordingly. So even if your organization has to make the rewards smaller, it is much better to give them an immediate reward when somebody is hired, because whose job is it to determine if the candidate's a fit? HR, the hiring manager, the organization as a whole, not the employee. The employee's job, we're just asking them to share the job. It's our job to make sure that those people are qualified. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see in the manufacturing world is because it's an employee referral, we give them special treatment and we interview all of them. Guys, that is not the best way to do that. And in fact, did you know I did some research on this? And in speaking with the actual employees, 80% of them are sometimes shocked when one of their friends gets hired because they didn't think that they were qualified or anything like that. So we have to remember that they're not going to be offended if you don't hire their friend most of the time. If they are, that's a whole different ballgame. But Most of them are not offended by that. In fact, they want to make sure that their friend gets a good job that they're going to last in, they're going to enjoy and have fun like they're having fun, right? And so that's important to understand. Your employees don't expect all of the people they refer to get hired. They just don't. And so we shouldn't put an expectation on ourselves to feel like we have to hire everybody. And it makes it a lot easier to express this gratitude immediately and basically say, thank you for sharing the job. Not thank you for this hire 6 months down the road when they pass the training class. That's our job as a company. Your job was to just go share the job, which you did. And so I want to say thank you. So this expression of gratitude is such an important part of an employee referral program, and it should be immediate. It should not be something that is 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, year down the road, because how many of you have forgotten to give out a bonus that you promised? It happens all the time. And all you're doing is you're killing the momentum of this flywheel for your employee referral program. So it's so important to remember that expressing gratitude, immediate gratitude, is best. And you know what we also found? Coming from the CEO is really good, coming from the HR director, but the most effective person that expresses gratitude is the hiring manager for the department to which that employee was hired. That is the most effective expression of gratitude, is coming from that particular individual to say, thank you for building up my department and buoying it up by providing somebody that I felt was a great fit. Thank you. Here's your gift card or whatever the reward might be. So I would challenge you this week, guys. Obviously, if you have questions, you can throw them in the Q&A area. We're going to end today. I know we're a little bit over the 30 minutes. I apologize. But I can't emphasize this enough. If you look at your employee referral program, one, it needs to be simple to share, and two, there has to be this way to express gratitude. And I can promise you that when you express that gratitude immediately instead of waiting so long to give out rewards, what we have seen is an increase of anywhere between 200% and 300% participation, because people recognize that, wow, they actually do care. And it also shows importance again. It shows how important it is to the organization to say thank you to their employees for bringing them some solid people that may not have looked at the organization otherwise. So next time we were going to talk about search engine optimization practices, or SEO, as some of you have heard. Why? Because Indeed, at its core, as we've talked about, is not a job board. It is a search engine. And because it's a search engine, this is probably one of the most popular webinars that we have, is the search engine optimization practices. And what are some of the tips and tricks that you can do to enhance your jobs to be more search engine friendly so that you can attract more applicants without necessarily having to spend a lot more money? So probably one of our more popular webinars. It will be the final webinar for this series. So I want to say thank you. I don't see any more questions coming through that I'm aware of, at least. But if you do have questions, I know there's a chat in here. Is that you, McKinley, the chat?
Yep, that was me.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to you, McKinley. If you want to schedule some time to talk with me, you can see my schedule there on the screen, or if you just have questions and you'd like me to look at your process, I'd be more than happy to do so. Otherwise, next week, our last webinar, we're going to talk about these search engine optimization practices, and I can guarantee you it will blow your mind, because there are some new rules that have come out from Indeed, even recently as of July, that are probably impacting your job listings and you don't even realize it. So I'm excited. It's one of my favorite presentations of all time. So that will be our final webinar. And as you can see, it'll be on November 9th. And so be prepared.
It's going to be great. I can't wait. Thank you so much, Steve. The webinar today was perfect. And thank you, everybody, for attending. I'm going to be getting the recorded version of this uploaded onto our YouTube channel Friday morning. So if you guys want to share it with anybody or rewatch it just in case you missed something, you can do it then. And I will also be sending an email out to all of you guys with the link to go watch the video too.
And don't forget, just like employee referrals, share this webinar with your colleagues. If you know other people in the HR world, in the manufacturing world, especially here in Utah, even if they're not in Utah, because I know we have some people not from Utah on this call today, please share this with others. It's so important that we share this information and knowledge and educate those around us, and especially if we feel like this was of value. And because those same feelings that you should have in your employee referral program is hopefully what you're feeling today, that, hey, this was worth it to me. I want to share this with my network of friends. So please, please, please share with your network of friends. And I am so excited about the last session. So
am I. It is going to be great.
Okay. I don't see any more questions. I just see a bunch of thank you. And thank you as well to everybody for attending today. And yeah, we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
All right, everybody. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephen.
Bye.